Thanks. So I'm actually going to do a slightly different talk for YUIConf this year. The last 3 years, my talks have been about code and building apps with YUI because I have a lot of experience doing that. And this year, I want to do something a little different and talk more about YUI open source projects and the communities involved with open source projects, in particular the YUI community. I'm from the YUI community. That's how I got on the team, is just being involved with it, talking at these conferences, getting to know everyone personally, and so it's kind of close to my heart. Like, the YUI community is a great community. It's way better than a lot of other JavaScript communities. It has the smartest and best-looking people, I think, in this community. But everybody knows JavaScript here. You go to other JavaScript conferences, and that's not necessarily the case. And so we have a common tie here. We're all building really awesome web applications. We all know JavaScript, and the community is a really big part of YUI. And I think it's important to talk about that. And we saw some changes announced at the conference, our new contributor model and how that flow works, but where do we go from there? And I want to dive into that, but then also have time for somewhat of a more open discussion and at the end, and get feedback from you guys. So I'll try to set the stage for this conversation, and hopefully everyone will be willing to participate and give some feedback and their thoughts on what they would like to see with YUI, and maybe where the good things are that we're doing, the pain points, and just how we can keep progressing. So I wanted to step back first and talk about the groups of three main groups that open source projects tend to fall into, or at least that I've seen. And so the first one is this idea that a project has open source. You can view the source and see what it's doing, use it for free, most likely. And this is how YUI started. Every time there was a release, we would take a zip file of the source and throw it up onto SourceForge, I believe then. And people could look at it and use it. Android kind of does this. I saw a tweet the other day. Somebody said, "Oh, Jelly Bean source should be available soon." And it's okay. But then there's other projects that are done a lot differently. And you kind of progress to this idea of open development, this idea that the source is always available. It's not available at release time, but it's always there. And people can always see it. They can see what's going on. They can understand what to anticipate coming. Like, if I'm an Android developer, I may not know what's coming in the next version of Android. But if I'm, a YUI, somebody working with the YUI library, I can probably understand what's going on because we've progressed to where our development is more open. We're describing all of the planned things that we're planning to do. We're trying to have open conversations through open hours. Our source is always up there. It's on GitHub, which makes it very accessible for people to see what's going on, follow the project. And I feel like this has a lot of value, and this is required for a project to have a community. I feel like to have this involved community where they're actually contributing back. The development has to be open. They have to know how where things are going, how they can participate, and this is very important. And I think that Yahoo supporting the YUI project and being able to do this development in the open, but still have a core team working on it, really helps make sure that things are getting done. I feel like this stage that a project is in, there's a lot of stuff happening. It's progressing, things are changing, features are added, refactorings are happening. It's a good state to be in. But some projects go further than this, and this is moving to a model of open governance, where not only is the code done in the open and people are contributing, but the organization of the project, the direction that it's going, is done in the open and done by the core members of a community and basically other stakeholders. And YUI is kind of in this weird position now where we have like a lot of big companies dependent on the library that is not just Yahoo. And this is where like this open governance really comes into play. We recently saw over the last year jQuery transition to this model. They now have the jQuery Foundation, which manages the project. And it's like, I think Microsoft, Adobe, Bocoup, and some other smaller design shops are involved, but there's like big companies and there's these smaller companies. And they're all getting together to try to figure out where's the direction of the project, what should they be focusing on, what are the priorities. And it has this different model than open development. Like YUI is clearly at open development. Open governance, there's still a lot that's strictly controlled by the core team. We make decisions in meetings that are not necessarily open. And I think that there's a nice sweet spot between there, because sometimes when projects go into this open governance mode, they essentially are in maintenance mode. And like if things get to the Apache Foundation, then there's not like this core team getting paid continuously to work on it or something like this, it may stagnate and it's just essentially in maintenance mode. So you definitely want to avoid that, or we would hope to want to avoid that. So now bringing this back into YUI, I feel like there's a few things we can look at. We can look at who's using YUI, and one group is clearly Yahoo. Yahoo uses YUI everywhere, but there's this other group, and it's essentially I'm just going to bucket as everybody else. And what's the interesting thing about this slide? They are separate. Okay. Bigger. I think there's one hidden thing here, though. The everybody else bucket chose YUI. They probably had to fight for it within their organization. At Yahoo, it's an engineering standard. If you want to use something different that overlaps a lot with YUI, you're going to have to make a case for why that makes sense. But I really don't think, Luke, like you said, that they're different. That's a good observation. But I think that something here is aligned. I think there is a lot of overlap here between these two groups. And first talking about the part that's not overlapping, when you think about the goals for the YUI project, I kind of see this as being the part that doesn't overlap is like these short-term goals. This is like, I'm working on an app, I run into a bug, I need this bug fixed. This bug is very specific to my application, whether I'm at Wells Fargo, NFL, on my own, working on a project. And they're really short-term goals. Like, I want this bug fixed so I can do a release. And same with Yahoo. There's Yahoo developers building properties at Yahoo, and they run into these same things. They need these bugs fixed. But then I think that the interesting part here is this overlap. And I think this is the long-term goals for YUI. And I feel like these are actually aligned. Ryan was just talking about when he was developing or enhancing search for SmugMug, that performance was a paramount thing here. At Yahoo, performance is also a paramount thing. And specifically, some of you may know that we have goals and work items for this quarter to work on performance of YUI. We want to improve the performance. And that's a long-term goal. It's a cross-cutting thing. There's a lot of work that needs to be done. And what's interesting here is these long-term goals fit really well for core team members or core committers to work on. We feel confident that the core team members and core committers can do this work, one, that it takes a vast understanding of the library. So if we wanted to improve attribute, that's not something we can expect necessarily just a community contribution to do. But having a core team focused on the library, I feel like we can dedicate time to this. And these are these longer cross-cutting goals. But for the short-term stuff, if you're in the JavaScript debugger and you see a statement that says like, if this, and you realize like, oh, this is where my bug is. If it just said or some other expression, then this would work. And you look and there's no unit test for it, and it's clearly a bug. And you're already in the debugger. You see exactly the lines of code. We just want you to change that, fix that, and submit it back as a pull request. We'll pull that in, and that way, like the core team doesn't have to build up the context of what you're doing and have you boil down your example to something we can understand, or remove your proprietary code that you don't want to put publicly somewhere so we can look at. Like, it's just so much easier a lot of times to just fix these problems. And I think for the short-term stuff this is where these contributions can come in from people who are not on the core team. But for the long-term stuff, I feel like we shouldn't expect these big changes to just happen from community members contributing. If they do, that's awesome, and we'll want to work with you to do this and dedicate time to it and resources to it. And one other thing I think about here when I see these two circles, this is kind of how the community around YUI operates. I guess it would be more everybody else fills a big role of like the external community, the community we know of as YUI. And at Yahoo, there's actually not as much participation in this like community that we would like to see. There's a lot of back channel stuff or emails or separate bug tracking things. And what I really think would be healthy for us to do is to really look at this as like one community. There's one YUI community. It encompasses people at Yahoo who are using YUI. It encompasses people anywhere else who are working on YUI. And I think that this would be really healthy because the people at Yahoo are doing really interesting stuff. We've seen that using YUI, and they have so much to contribute back, so much knowledge, so much ways to help, bugs to fix, and they don't have to wait on us. They have strict deadlines. They need to make releases, just like other people who are building products, like much stricter deadlines than what a library or framework has to do. And like getting bugs fixed, getting that stuff in, we have rapid release cycles now. Like we can get that stuff in. You commit, or you do a pull request for a bug fix, that thing will get in a month, like in a stable release, available to everybody, like a month at the latest, right? We're seeing tools that we now have, which are removing these technical barriers, making it much easier to actually contribute to YUI, to work with it, to develop with it. And so this is something I would like to see, personally. I would like to see more internal Yahoo people contributing in this community, because they just have so much good knowledge and information and can really help out the project. And I think that like everybody benefits from this. One interesting thing we see is like, if you think of this pyramid, this inverted pyramid, as resources, you have the library at the bottom, or framework, but then there's other frameworks built on top, like we saw talk about Mojito, Miata. These are frameworks built on top of YUI. There's also people who, at their companies, they may have like a layer that they put over top, a standardized layer that they use, and then they build products on top of that. And usually there's a lot of people on a product team compared to like the library team and the frameworks as well. And so we don't want to be the bottleneck for this type of stuff, especially for these like small bug fixes, doc changes, any of this stuff. And you know, everybody in here are contributors or can contribute. And we would love to get this. I think that it'll really be healthy for the project to have all of these people helping contribute and helping keep the library progressing and keeping it stable, because this could easily tilt, right? And we don't want this to fall over. We want YUI to be this like very stable, rich, and useful lower library level that you can build on top of and help keep it that way. And part of the resourcing thing is we have, there's this core team at Yahoo. We're working on YUI. I'm on that team. But some other times, we are employees of Yahoo. Some other times we're working on other projects and we're helping other teams, or we're sitting in with other teams and doing these things. And this is actually really, really healthy. This causes us on the core team to be using our own components, to be eating our own dog food. And I think that this is actually really important for us to do as library developers, to be doing this. And so if something isn't necessarily getting done on time, like the core team member who may be best suited for doing that is working on another project, hopefully in a lot of the times when they're able to come back, they're able to feed so much more into the library and do such a better job at this new feature that they want to add or refactoring, because they got a lot of real world experience. And this is the other thing too, all these people who are building products also are essentially have a lot of real world experience using YUI and have a lot to feed back to it. So that's where I think the external community, the Yahoo product developers, they're dog fooding YUI, right? And there's just so much that they could give back to us. And so if I were to try to think of some low-hanging fruit that we have, how we can move forward, a few of these things we've even announced this conference, right? We moved to GitHub as a source of truth. This means that when we do our builds through our CI system, you can see the results. You can see the test failures. This is really important for the last item there, opening it up to non-Yahoo contributors. So this way, if and the two that we announced, Luke and Ryan, if they were to go in and make some change and break the build, they would know and see why and be ashamed and fix it before dinner. But some other things, we've been talking about. We've started transitioning a little bit the community outreach we were doing, and we now have Andrew on the team, and he's dedicated to this. And so he's been thinking of a lot of things too. And we have Derek, who's been doing YUI Weekly, and we've been having some more ad hoc design discussion meetings on Google Hangouts, and people have been really liking that. We have open hours as well, but we actually have on the team 2 meetings that we do every Thursday. One is more of a Yahoo employee meeting, and the other one is more of a YUI meeting, a YUI roundtable meeting. And it seems like some of these roundtable meetings is something that we can easily open up, just put on Google Hangout, and if we're talking about a topic, like a new feature, we can invite the people into the Hangout who are the stakeholders of that, and then allow anybody else to watch it later if they care to watch it. So we've been talking about this internally, and it basically seems like a no-brainer, and something we can easily do. We're really good at using Google Hangout. And one thing I would like to see, which would be cool, is with lowering the barriers to contribute to YUI and the gallery, and me standing up here asking you guys to help with the core, it would be awesome to see a double the number of contributors. So next year, when we look at how many people have contributed to YUI, how many people have authored commits, if that number is twice as much as it is today. I think it's something around 80-ish right now. So to get over 150, I think that'd be awesome. And then similar to this open meeting idea, a lot of the design decisions can be done more openly, and we've been doing that. We've been writing out design documents, putting them on our GitHub wiki. If you don't know that we have a wiki on GitHub, you should check it out. It has a lot of good information. Our schedule for releases, the things we're working on, history change roll-up files so you can see everything that's changed from release to release. We also have design decisions up there. Some of this is in pull requests. Some of this is in documents on the wiki. And I think that going along with the open meetings, we can make some of these larger design decisions by bringing in the people who are in the community who really care about this and who really want to contribute this. So if we were doing skinning stuff, we can bring in the stakeholders there who really care most about skinning, care to help out, and may even be able to offer some resources from another company to help us collaborate with us to get these features done. And so I think that that some of this stuff is low-hanging fruit. I think you guys probably have a lot better ideas. You know, we were able to easily come up with a contributor model for YUI. It just made sense. Like we have contributors, committers, core committers, and reviewers. Like that's kind of how things are working anyways. We just formalized it, and that makes a lot of sense. But when we get into more of like the bigger picture governance stuff, like what direction are we going? What are our priorities? We were trying to figure that out, and we realized that this is actually kind of a hard thing to figure out. And also, wait, we can't just figure this out ourselves. We need to involve the people who, you guys, who would be interested in this and who would want to help out and who would maybe want to be a part of being in these open meetings, helping us, telling us what your priorities are. And so that's kind of where I want to end and open up the floor, maybe get a feel for what people think would be important that we could do as the core team that would make it easier for you guys to contribute, feeling like you're part of the community, feeling like you have some ownership over YUI and its future and keeping it progressing for everybody. And so if people have thoughts, I think we'd definitely like to hear them. Somebody has to have a thought.
Come on, guys.
They're digesting all this.
When this is your code, it's your stuff.
Thank you. This makes perfect sense. We have been using, YUI for many years, and we can really see the team progressing to this open governance. That's very much appreciated. It's so reasonable. At the same time, I think there's no governance system that is perfect. Everything has flaws. So even democracy, it comes with a lot of headaches and all that. So hence the balance. I think, having a core team that ultimately, you can vote, and people that care about voting for something might have a super, good reasons to vote one way or another. But at some point, you also have to have people say, you know what? At the end of the day, you have to make some decisions in one direction or another. So anyway, just a comment that proceed with caution. I would say, because it can get wild. We don't want this to become like other libraries or communities that they go on wildly and there's a lot of drama and a lot of opinions and So very much appreciated. Just proceed with caution. We'll be sure to contribute the best we can. So. That's just a thought I wanted to share.
Yeah. I think that seems right. The idea of being between like open development, open governance, where we can still get a lot of stuff done, but not be caught up in bureaucracy. Like we don't want to all of a sudden pile on a bunch of bureaucracy onto the whole process. I think that makes sense.
Eric, this is really great stuff, and I've been super excited to see what you and Dave have been talking about lately, and the way YUI has been opening up and embracing external committers and things like that. And it makes me think that one of the interesting things about this is we've always talked about the YUI team as the core team that's employed by Yahoo to work on YUI. It seems like there's no longer that distinction anymore. If we open up meetings about the library and if we open up external commit access and if we have the concept of contributors and committers and reviewers, there's no longer really a concept of a YUI team. There are always going to be people who are paid to work on YUI, whether it's at Yahoo or at SmugMug or at Wells Fargo or any of these other companies that use YUI, and so that raises kind of an interesting terminology question. Like, aren't we all the YUI team if they're external contributors and maybe someday external reviewers? And I think that would be really cool if we can just sort of all think of ourselves as the YUI team. Yeah.
I think that everybody should. I mean, if you're contributing stuff, I would hope that you would feel a part of it. I know I felt a part of it being an external contributor really before we even had the stuff that we're doing now. And I think that there is actually, the distinction of having people who are dedicated, are paid essentially to be dedicated to the project is important, I feel like, for its continued advancement. But if SmugMug wants to give you a month to pound out some YUI stuff, like we'll be okay with that. Yeah.
Just some feedback on contributing, and specifically with new contributors. I know that like when I first started looking at YUI, and I'd find a bug, and I'd be like, oh, this is a really simple thing, I can fix it. But then there was a real, at least a few years ago, there was like some real barrier to entry as far as, oh, I've got to learn Git, and I've got to learn this, and I've got to write these tests, and my code isn't good enough to do this. And so like one thing to keep in mind as you're trying to attract new committers and contributors is just like really think about the ways to lower that barrier to entry, and to teach someone who maybe doesn't know this entire tool chain or doesn't understand the current coding practices, like how to get to that point where they can contribute and empower them to do that.
Yeah, I wonder what would be the best way to do that. Like we could write up some documentation and try to coerce Evan to write it for us to do that. But I wonder if having like a combination of screencasts to help out and meetings, open meetings. But yeah, I think that makes sense. And I hope that with Yogi, we've definitely lowered the barrier. I know like even for us, it's like so much easier. It's like night and day, and the speed is just 10 times faster to build stuff. But the one thing that we wouldn't do is necessarily, we wouldn't want to lower our quality standards either. So it is an interesting balance there, because we would want to make sure to encourage people to contribute, but contribute at a high level, but hopefully that's not too onerous for them to do so and takes them away from their main focus of like building a product or something.
I'd like to add something to that. As the manager of the YUI team at Yahoo, one of my jobs is to ensure that the team is coding to a certain standard and that I'm growing the maturity of the team as engineers and growing the discipline as a whole at Yahoo, which I think also impacts the rest of the industry through conferences like this. And so that's a process that I can open up more, and whatever we're working on as a team to kind of raise our bar is to just communicate that so that all of the teams that you're working on can kind of be on the same page with all of that too. One question over here.
Is more, I guess, getting into the weeds potentially, but considering the ease of the gallery now, what do you envision like the pathway to something getting into core? Is it just like it was in the past? It's been kind of an ad hoc thing. Oh, this is written potentially by a core team member, but in the gallery, and we're going to graduate it. Would that be something that the community decides, or do you?
Well, I mean, how we've done it in the past is actually we would have a roundtable meeting to kind of figure that out, and I think that's where opening that up and allowing some of the people, the person who's contributing especially, to be involved in that conversation would help determine that, and if it should be in core or not, or gallery. But also with the new gallery stuff, it's really bringing the modules to a first-class citizen. So it's not necessarily like the pathway of still pushing it out to gallery, and then all of a sudden core components want to depend on these things. Okay, maybe that makes sense to pull it into core then. But I still think that pathway of gallery first is kind of a no-brainer there, especially with the changes and especially the coming changes to the website to really highlight gallery modules and quality gallery modules. And Dave talked about that in his talk, where if we have a component in YUI, maybe it's an older one, and then somebody's contributing a new one that's maintained, that has full tests that people are depending on, then that maybe should make sense to either just remove the thing out of YUI core if we felt that we shouldn't have it in there anymore, or bring in the gallery one. So, yeah.
So really welcome all of this as well. I wonder if there is a helpful role about kind of actively encouraging collaboration within Yahoo and outside, so that people working on similar things or similar projects can do so together, if that makes sense. For kind of less experienced people, they get some kind of mentoring almost within YUI to kind of learn from others as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely like to see that, and hopefully just I'm trying to think of like if there's a good way to get the internal Yahoo people collaborating more. I mean, there's some that do, and it's amazing. Like they really love YUI. They're really passionate and get things in the library or help other people out. And I don't know, somehow highlighting them as role models for other developers inside of YUI or inside of Yahoo to do the same. But I think that the people outside of Yahoo can also be doing this too. Like I don't really, when it comes to helping the project, I don't really make a distinction in my head. Like sometimes I don't even know that somebody I'm talking to is actually an employee of Yahoo. Like I don't find out till later or something. Yeah.
Question over here first. Oh, is that a follow-up? Yeah, just a follow-up. Just talking to the mic.
I'll tell you one of the big things about the IRC channel is the fact that you get that open dialogue, and that
Yeah.
if you have any questions or anything like that, people that are familiar with YUI are able to contribute back to what you're working on, and then a lot of us core team members are actually hanging out in the IRC channel as well to help out with problems.
Yeah, and it's even the case that the core team members are usually not answering all the questions. Like it's other people who are in the community helping out. So I mean, yeah, if you even if you work internally at Yahoo and you have a question about YUI, it's actually probably faster to go in the IRC channel, and most likely it'll be answered by somebody who's not a core YUI member. So.
Question over here.
Thanks. Wanted to point out that one of the benefits of contributing is they send you this awesome T-shirt, so that's really cool. As a contributor, it made me feel kind of more connected, so that's nice. Yogi is definitely going to have a big impact. I can totally see how it would be a lot easier, so thank you for that.
Thank Dave for that one.
Yeah. Maybe two suggestions. Getting to the other commenter's point, I don't think it can be stressed or overstressed how nice it is to have explicit steps on how to do things, particularly with people that are unfamiliar with Git, because there are several different workflows for Git. So, do I rebase? Do I maybe do a merge squash? All these different things. So that would be really nice, whether it's a screencast or something on the wiki or wherever. I would maybe point out, try not to diverge too much. Like we have the GitHub wiki now, and then we also have the YUILibrary.com website. So maybe kind of guidance on what should go where, and also maybe explicit instructions on how to add examples to the either the wiki or YUILibrary.com if you have maybe an awesome data table example. I know that T. Smith from the channel has some things that would be really excellent additions to that. So
yeah, his examples would be great. Do you think that if we were to split where the contributing stuff was all sort of hosted on GitHub, where the source is, where the pull requests are, that would be like a good divide, where then for all the using stuff, if you were just using YUI, then all that information's on the website? Do you think that would be good instead of mixing the how to contribute between both places?
Yeah, I don't know if I'm the best person to answer that, but it makes sense to me. One.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Cross-link, yeah.
Could you repeat the comment?
Repeat the comment.
Luke said to put a link, an explicit link on YUILibrary.com to make sure we're pointing over to the right places in GitHub.
For me personally, and this is still something we're working out, I agree that diverging places of documentation gets confusing. The wiki is where we house things that are works in progress and evolving documents, and then once something kind of gets codified, it will land on the website as documentation. So for instance, right now we've got contribution standards on the wiki because that's something that's new and we want feedback and we want to be editing that and have the history available and all that. And then once we kind of formalize that, we'll throw it up as a tutorial on the website. So that's kind of what I have in my head. So if there's any feedback on that or guidance, advice, suggestions on that, I would love to hear that as well. Did you?
You covered it.
I really love the open source nature of YUI, but one of the issues is that it's mostly volunteer. How does a team feel about providing a paid support model? So for a company like the one I work at, if we want to, we want to use YUI, but we can't get the developers in-house, and we come up with an issue in YUI that's low priority for the rest of the community, but for us it's specific and it's high priority for us, but we don't have the talent to implement a fix. How do you feel about paid support, that type of model?
Yeah, I mean, that's interesting, and I definitely can't speak authoritatively on that, but
I can say something.
yeah,
All
you
right.
should.
So Yahoo does not offer any sort of paid support model. One thing that has worked really well in the past is that companies or teams that are looking for more direct support, they've reached out to members of the community who do provide paid support. And so connecting those two parties is something that we could do a little bit better, a little more out in the open, promoting, companies or teams that provide those services to companies that are looking for them. In the past, it's been on either through IRC or people emailing me directly and then me kind of making those connections. But that's something that we could do a little bit more formally. And I think as the community grows, there's going to be more parties kind of on both sides that are looking for each other. So we can do more for that.
So to reply to that and actually to continue, oh, darn it, and to continue his point, that does, at the higher level, what that does is it abstracts into a separate entity where the money comes in to influence the decisions for the library. So right now, YUI is a product of Yahoo, and the money is internal, and it's going to the core developers, and therefore the influence by that money is through employment. So the external contributors, they get to contribute to the library. They happen to be paid by their employers to contribute to the library, and it gets paid that way. So the justification has to be from the employer to the employee that your role in my company is to contribute to this open source library.
Sure.
Now, it's been successful for Yahoo, but when a company starts to really bank on YUI, then it does raise the question of, can we, rather than pay employees of our company to work dedicated time on YUI, can we pay this general pool of people that are specialized in YUI to have our interests prioritized in some way? And so that seems to abstract out to the idea that you've seen in other libraries of a foundation or a separate entity that then gets financial contributions from the consumers of that library. So you want to talk about the foundation?
Well, I mean, there's not a foundation, right? But that's something that would be like it's come up before, but it's a bigger thing. Like, it's a much bigger change, and that's where I was trying to go with the idea of what types of stuff can we do to get the benefits of that without the drawbacks, and is it possible to be somewhere balanced between it, still being something that is copyright Yahoo Inc., but that really we would have a lot of the same benefits that something that had a completely open governance model had, and a foundation without the overhead of trying to us not only code, but then like run a foundation or something. Like, would there be enough money to support that? I feel like, and then would there be too much bureaucracy? There's just a lot of more unknowns there, and I think that would have to be like a lot like further out thing in reality. But I think it would be interesting to see what ends up happening with jQuery going through this, and like, will they continue to work on jQuery mobile, jQuery UI, the main jQuery project? like what will happen there when like if the business interests of the parties involved in the foundation start to diverge, like, and I think it's still like kind of a new thing for at least like JavaScript libraries and these things, but and the communities involved. So yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, but I think in like now in reality, like what can we do? I think there's a lot of other things we could focus on to get a lot of those same benefits, and hopefully we can do that.
So I really love Yogi. I'm really excited about that. But I was curious what your take on what is the dividing line between the gallery and the enormous ecosystem of small and medium and large size libraries that lie outside the gallery. So for example, in Ryan's talk, he showed an example of, hey, there's this cool regex library that's just sitting out there, and hey, I can just load it using the loader. So when we're thinking about what YUI Core should be doing, what the YUI Gallery should be doing, and what the rest of the universe should be doing, like where do you think we should draw that line, and should we be encouraging people to grab stuff from Cloudflare, wrap it in the loader, and use it?
Yeah, I think that that Ryan, I really like Ryan's comment on that, with the idea that the loyalty should be to the users who are actually trying to solve real problems for, and not necessarily to like tools. And so I would definitely try to echo that. But then I think that it's going to also be constantly evolving where that line is. Like, should the YUI core continue to grow, or should it be shrinking? Because now we have a much more fully fledged gallery. But I think the idea of like being a good neighbor with other JavaScript libraries is still important there, and I think that the features that YUI has, specifically like around the loader and that whole concept of modules and dependencies and being able to do that, is definitely something that we have an advantage of over other libraries. Because if you would imagine trying to if you look at like the similar or the standard Backbone stack or something, you may be loading Backbone underscore jQuery, maybe jQuery UI or jQuery mobile, and then require.js, and then having to work with AMD modules and put all this stuff together, and you're like spending a lot of time essentially building a stack that is very similar to YUI, at least at its core. So I think that we definitely do have the advantage of being so modular and granular, to be able to move that line around where it makes sense. And I don't think we have it nailed down yet, and it'll be interesting to see what ends up happening when the gallery stuff starts to become like a lot more of a first-class thing integrated with the library at the website and documentation levels. So who's going to be a contributor to YUI this year? Nice.
We have a question over here.
Yeah, so you mentioned sort of in passing about this idea of there's something that's in core, and maybe there's something in gallery that's better. Mm-hmm. Maybe it should come out of core. That's never happened so far as I can recall. Has there ever been anything that, I mean, there's been some features that have been deprecated perhaps, but history? Oh, history went away. Oh, okay. So this, so just to repeat that for the mic, history existed, and then History Lite came in and it replaced history. So history in its original incarnation went away.
Yeah, History Lite was a gallery module, right? Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I guess that would be the
replacement, but not the leaving the void in the core, right?
Right. So in case of resourcing challenges in maintaining the current size of core, something is getting left in the dust, and there might be some community interest in that. There's the external contributors that can help maintain that, But if it's not getting enough love, should it be demoted from core, or is there some other way of identifying that? Or is the exposure on the YUI library site in terms of when this was last updated or when this was last changed or something like that supposed to be exposing that level of detail?
Yeah, that's probably a good information to expose, like when the last time this was updated in a release. But in terms of, I mean, I don't think we're going to have like a formula to apply to it. I think it's going to be more just like what seems to make sense. Like if people are not using a component anymore because that type of interaction isn't used on the web really these days, then that could be something that could move around. And
Also, if a code base is stable, then it doesn't really need updating, but that doesn't mean it's not useful in the core either.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's a good point. With the change with exposing the gallery more into on the website alongside the actual core modules, it does blur the line between the value of contributing to the library and the value in the gallery versus into the core. So as that line continues to blur, can you help clarify what the distinction is for choosing one target over another? Certainly in the case of gallery, you get to maintain your own repo and then push in somewhere, but if it were possible to maintain your own repo and push into core versus gallery, and how the relationship is there, I guess is a little bit gray.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really just, and the contributor model also adjusts that a little bit too. But it just depends essentially who's going to be the owner and maintainer of that component, I think at that point. And yeah, the line is blurry, but I think for, I don't know, a good thing, like it's good that it is. And if people are contributing, I think if there's clearly a core component that has a bug, well, that will obviously get fixed there. And that's mainly for new features. And I kind of think that like having some new features coming up through gallery will be something that happens more now. Like I kind of see that. Like if it's some new thing, it'll come into gallery first. We will want to use it in core. Like you imagine like promises or something. We put it in the gallery, all of a sudden we want to start using it in the library, and it makes sense to pull in, then we would, right? And I think that the discussion about pulling it in would involve more people than just the core team at Yahoo talking about it.
Yeah, so Eric, I got something to follow up on that. So one of my goals for the gallery is to blur that line as far as humanly possible. And really, essentially what one of our releases is just a bundle of these modules that happen to work together really well, right? So if they're gallery modules, there's no real difference between a gallery module and a core module if they all work together. So we're trying to break that line of core, because a core release is something that's the low-level parts, and it's the things that everything in the system relies on, so they have to be extremely stable at all times. If we can reduce the size of that, we could actually iterate on it faster. But by moving some things into the gallery, you get weekly CDN releases. I mean, that's like 100 times faster than what we push out a release, right? So if you find a bug in one of your modules, you could actually put that thing into the CDN queue, and bam, the people can use it the next week. If I get it down fast enough, we could do daily CDN releases. I mean, right now it takes 50 some odd seconds to deploy it. I could write a script to do that. That way I don't have to do it anymore. But really, the idea of the releases themselves is they're just a bunch of modules that just happen to shake hands really well, right? So it doesn't matter where they live. And that's what I'm trying to do, is break that barrier down so that these things, no matter where the hell they live, they work, they act, and they feel exactly the same way, and they all interact with each other. But giving you the control of updating your modules even faster. And I think that's more of a benefit of what we're looking for, is trim that core down so it's nice, it's lean, it's fast, it does everything it's supposed to do, and then you just get to pick and choose whatever you want. So one of the features that I have coming up in the next couple of weeks is actually a customized loader build that will build loader metadata for your gallery modules. So that right there is a huge difference from the way we've done it before, because gallery you had that little problem with having to fetch 1 or 2 items or having to build your own combo URL. But what if you could build your own metadata? What if you could pull up a list of the YUI source tree? You could say, I want these 6 gallery modules, I want these 4 of my custom modules, and I want these 3 YUI modules. And this thing builds you a damn zip file of everything. It says, here, this is all I ever need. That's the same thing we would do, only we're putting a stamp on it and saying this is 3 dot whatever, right? That's my end goal. My end goal is to be able to say, I want to use these 4 or 5 things, and this is all I actually need. So if you're building a Windows 8 application, you can say, I only want this, and it's only going to give you the Win 8 stuff and the 2 widgets that you want that you have to include in your app. So now your app's really tiny. You don't have to do all that. You don't have to do all the dependency configuration yourself. We'll do that. That's all the same thing. So our release, a gallery release, a bundle that you build yourself, they're all the same. And that's what I'm trying to do, is bring all of those things together so that they work and they act and they just interact and shake hands and go out and have beers and party and all that other good stuff together. So does that make sense?
So can I follow up?
Yeah.
Is it worth thinking about moving widgets from the core into the gallery that are there at the moment? Because
I'm a big fan of that. I am a huge fan of moving widgets back into the gallery so they can be iterated on faster and better and by more people. Because if they're pulled over into their own module, then you got GitHub pull requests. You guys can collaborate all you want together and work on them really, really fast in really, really small, tight circles. And then bam, push it up to the CDN. Everybody benefits. Rock on. Move on to the next one.
So something like Promises is core because it's central and important and needs to be in core quickly. But dials are nice, but not.
Exactly. But that also gives the core YUI team at Yahoo the ability to actually break away from our sprints, because we have to dedicate sprints to what we're going to work on. I can dedicate and say I'm going to be working on Loader this entire time, but knowing that I can get an editor build out tomorrow, I could go over and fix 15 bugs in editor overnight. 6 cases of Mountain Dew and all. Fix all those bugs and actually have a CDN deployment for just that module tomorrow, instead of having to wait 3 months for it to actually go through the entire QA process and bundle everything down and put a release on it and stamp it. I still get it out there and people can start using it. And that's really my goal, is the really fast, rapid iteration of pushing these things out there.
The other interesting thing, too, with having the smaller core is, we want YUI to run in a lot of different environments, right, including on the server in Node.js. And, right now we have on the website a list of modules that run natively in Node, because they just require a JavaScript runtime, and the other ones that require a DOM. And seeing that other list is much longer, it's kind of weird to think why do I need to download this whole huge bundle of YUI to use on Node, and I'm only using a few of the classes and utilities. Having it be a smaller core, it makes more sense to say that it's running more places, because a larger percentage of the core library runs in these environments.
Hi. One more more than question. This is feedback for what just Dave was just saying. So I'd like to hopefully ask that we can take it one notch higher. Everything you're saying makes absolute perfect sense, because that's something we work with and have to shuffle every day. We work at I'm from Wells Fargo, and we cannot. There's a couple of things that if you can help us do better, it'll be just like heaven. One of them is that we cannot use the CDN. Yeah. Unfortunately, we have to host everything in our own CDN, and everything has to run SSL. It's just there's just no way for us not to do that. So, and the other thing is that, for better or worse, we cannot just freely decide to use GitHub. We can't. So all of our sources, everything we do, the hosting, everything has to be internal in our own data centers. So if you can take it one notch higher and say, okay, everything you're saying can be done either on the Yahoo CDN and on GitHub, as well as on any other CDN or any other source code repo, that'll be beautiful, because we are actually building an internal community of front-end engineers in Wells Fargo. We tried to raise the bar of front-end engineering, which was horribly low. And so, yeah. And so
everything you guys are doing about the community, the gallery, this is exactly what we're building just internally. This is enterprise level. But it's exactly the same thing. We have a lot of teams, a lot of verticals, a lot of lines of businesses moving, trillions of dollars, and we want them to have a decent UI, right? So that's just, my comment and feedback. Just keep where you're going. It's a beautiful direction. Just also consider these companies like ourselves that we cannot just use all over your infrastructure. I would love to, but we can't.
Well, what about Grifter, right?
That's what I was getting ready to say. Yesterday at my keynote, I mentioned the new tool that's going to be coming out soon called Grifter, who steals shit. And Grifter actually builds the CDN deployment for the gallery, and it will work for our YUI3 CDN deployment. It's the same thing. That's what I'm trying to tell you, is that tool is the thing that's going to just build this zip file that you just put wherever the hell you want. So if you've got a CDN deployment, you take this zip file, you explode it, and you push it up to S3, you push it up to Cloudflare, you push it wherever the hell you want it to go, and it's exactly what you wanted.
Regarding the split between core and gallery, one of the challenges with gallery is just the challenge of open source in general, that code ages, and some of the modules on gallery, people maybe lose interest or have moved on. So if we take Color Picker for a recent example that I ran across, there's a gallery-color picker, there's an Alloy UI color picker, and then there's several other ones that are kind of more just like showing the palette and you can select. So none of those kind of fit are my project-specific needs, because the gallery one, it uses the canvas, so it only supports like IE 9 and up. The Alloy one is just broken. I think that it's just hasn't been maintained. So eventually we landed on YUI 2 and 3 as a solution. But it doesn't have to be color picker, it could be whatever. I guess the challenge there is, what do you do? How do you kind of address that? And maybe it's to allow multiple committers for gallery modules, like not have it be so owned by just one person. I don't know, mechanically how you would do that, but it's just something that
Well,
I ran
if the
across.
gallery module is in GitHub, then you could issue a pull request against the GitHub author and collaborate that way.
Like a
Well, then you
transition
could fork
process, like an ownership transition process. I mean, that seems like something Dave could get done in the morning one day.
Do you want the mic?
I guess follow up on the SSL question before. I know Yahoo does not support HTTPS to the CDN, and Grifter is great and all, but for those of us who do want a combo loader, is there any plans on updating the current official combo loader? The PHP one seems out of date,
Yeah.
and there's a Node.js one, but that requires running Node, and that's a whole nother stack that, if we don't currently use, we would rather not pull in.
Has the PHP one gotten a new owner? Do you know, Ryan?
Well, the PHP one's not technically a combo loader. It
Yeah.
does comboing, but it's actually the loader logic inside of PHP. So there's actually one called Minify, and I think Ryan Grove wrote the first version of that one. Am I right? Yeah. So there's one called Minify that actually works with YUI3 very well, and it's in PHP. That was the first one I actually used in my sites when I was running PHP, which I don't do anymore. And there are several combo loaders. It's on our list. Actually, it's one of Andrew's things, is to actually put together the list of all the combo loaders in all the various languages and link to them and show them this is how you set it up for YUI3. But I can tell you, for SSL support, we will likely not ever open Gallery to SSL, because that's just horribly, 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 horribly wrong. Because we can't trust that code, so we can't actually tell you should serve this over SSL. So it's providing third-party stuff that you don't ever know about over SSL is just really, really bad. Ryan has an excellent blog article on that. But being able to put up a combo loader in different languages is actually really easy. I mean, all it does is split a query string, grab some files, concatenate it, and spit it out. I mean, God, you could write that in like 20 minutes in any language possible, right? It's not that tough, especially if you have a CDN in front of it that you can just blast the thing off to the edge and then you're done. You never have to worry about it again. Does that kind of answer the question?
Sure.
All right. I don't even know what it was.
Question over here.
Thanks. So yesterday, Luke's talked about attribute, and today's Ryan talked about the whole performance thing. I think those are really helpful. So I'm just wondering that, like today, people are all contributing code, which is obvious, right? I'm wondering if it's possible that for each, whether it's a core module or this gallery module, there could be dedicated place for people to contribute examples and contribute performance benchmark results. Because then that, I think, at one hand, it's really becomes more informative, like more depth, right? And on the other hand, it could push the author to go even higher bar.
Yeah, so one of the things we're doing is adding benchmark tests into YUI's tests, so people would be able to run those benchmarks just like we do with Yogi. I'm sure Dave will add a Yogi test -- benchmark if it's not already there, and be able to run benchmarks. And that's something that we have on the roadmap that we want to be doing. And then for examples, the way all our documentation is written is it's actually bundled inside the module directory as mustache files, just like Tony was showing for a gallery module. So, and we've actually had a handful of people contributing full examples that they write out, we review through a pull request, tweak some things, that they add some more commits, and then we merge it in, and we can deploy the website at any time we want for the new examples. So even though we may be 3 weeks out before the next release, we can go ahead and get an example live that day. So that's one of the things that we changed essentially over this last year, is adding all of our documentation being right in with the source code so that these new examples can come up. And it's actually a great way to contribute is people adding examples. It's much funner to do that than adding tests, and definitely helpful for people.
I have a question over here.
I just wanted to say that going back to the CDN, we can do that today without having probably the griph is going to be soon in 2 weeks, but we can do that today. Actually, we're doing the combo loading for Mojito that way, where we use our CDN, but we can use, for example, Amazon. You can build your CDN where combo loads, and basically just you change the combo load URL, loading the loader, and then you build this metadata. For Mojito, we're doing that ourselves. Probably with Griffin, you can do that automatically for you. So if you for answering the Wells Fargo guy, you can do that today. Just creating your own metadata for your modules, and just if you have the ability to have your CDN with just the combo loaded to concatenate the files. So you should be pretty straightforward to do today without having to wait until Mr. Dav publishes his Griffin thing.
You guys should connect if you have any further questions about what he said. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more last questions.
So I was just wondering, when we're talking about contributing things that aren't code to a particular gallery module, have we considered approaching it toward the NPM model of multiple authors that are authorized to make pushes and such for any given module? I mean, I don't know how there was a line for the author in that the metadata that Anthony showed, but is that going to be extended upon? Do you think? Is it 2.5? Right on.
Yeah, I think just for simplicity, it's going to start off how it is now, where there's one owner of a Git repo, but that Git repo can be anything. It doesn't have to be the whole monolithic YUI3 gallery anymore. And that's the biggest change for that stuff for Gallery 2.0 at the Git level.
All right, let's end this thing with a bang. Naming discussion. We got modules that are in core right now. They get pushed out to gallery. What are they called? And what are the gallery modules called? Can we drop the gallery, or would that be a bad thing? It's all naming.
All right, we'll take a vote on that.
So the reason that we're stuck with the gallery dash is that the way the YUI seed loads that's a pattern. So it has to look for that pattern, and it goes and fetches one single file from the CDN. And I hate that. I really, 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 really hate that. So in the next couple of weeks, gallery builds are actually going to have a loader metadata file associated with them that you can combo load and then do a use, and it will do combo requests for everything that it knows about. That's a couple of weeks out because remember, I'm on vacation next week, so don't expect shit. All right? But that's actually what part of Grifter's doing. There's actually a command called Yogi Loader. And when you fire Yogi Loader, it does the meta join script that we always do to build our loader metadata. And if you noticed when you did a Yogi update or a Yogi create, you got a meta directory that had your data in there. Go into your gallery and say Yogi Loader, and it'll build you loader metadata for those modules. That's what I'm going to do when I run a build. Is I'm going to go through and run through all of those, and I'm going to generate a loader seed file that you can then require per build, and you'll have all of the metadata necessary. The same goes for Grifter. It'll go through and it could build this thing, and then it could truncate all the crap that you don't need, open up the loader metadata, knock all the crap out of there that you're not going to need, dump in the new stuff, and say, here, there's my custom seed, my custom build. At that point, I could get rid of the gallery, but not until then. And it's going to take us several cases of Mountain Dew bribery to get that moved up a little higher, just so you know.
And now you know. So thank you all for participating in this discussion. This is something we're going to continue online and throughout the year. We have a couple quick lunchtime announcements. Did you want to close with anything before that, Eric?
No, yeah. Thanks everybody for having this talk. I think it's really good to start this and to continue it and increase the amount of interactions that we have in meetings and various other forums. So.